Hi, welcome to another installment of Let's Watch Kim Make a Quilt. I have all of my pieces cut, including the fussy cutting, and I think totally I have put about 7 hours into the actual cutting of the pieces. Everything you see here is for the head, her hair and face in the pattern, and in the pattern here, it's just a little section on its own, labeled by letter. The instruction for Tilda patterns does not say take piece A and sew it to piece B. You just look at the diagram and figure out where they go. There are 8 women, 8 ladies in this pattern that face left and 8 that face to the right. So when I am making these pieces, I have to remember that I do a mirror image. And what I'm doing right now, what I was doing when the video started, and thanks to the handyman for being my camera guy today, I am drawing diagonal lines like this on one of the pieces, and this is this is a 1-inch square, and in a previous video I showed you the 3/4-inch squares that we'll be doing this on, and I have to draw these diagonal lines on, and they fit onto, this is part of her head, this is her hair, and this is some background. I've already sewn several of these. The pattern calls this a 1/4 square triangle, where you sew on, or I sew just to the outside of the line that I draw, about a needle's width, and you trim this excess off here and fold this back. So what happens is you start getting the shape of her head and her face, and also when we get to the torso of her body, it will make we do some shaping there too. But what I'm doing now is getting ready to sew one of these little squares into the corner, and it will lay on here like this, and you want to line it up nice and evenly. And I am also I'm doing what's called chain piecing. I take all my pieces and I do one right after the other without cutting my thread. Saves thread, saves time. So I'm going to sew right here. I'm going to sew just to the outside, towards this outside corner, about a needle's width away. And I go slow because the pieces are so small, it helps with control. And there you have it. Here's another. I'll do one more. And because these are rectangular shaped pieces, it does matter where you put it. So it places correctly in the overall piece. This is this is like the top of her head, and on the left, this will be for the left facing lady. I think this is what you could call her ear. So here we go, one more time. Okay, and we'll pause for a second, and I'll keep sewing all these on, and I'll come back and explain the pressing part. Okay, I have cut apart all my little squares here. This is kind of her forehead. This is going to end up being part of her. I call it her forehead. She kind of has bangs. And I'm trimming off. If you see right here, I'm going to trim off to where I have about 1/4 inch on the outside of my stitching line. This is called what between the stitching line and the edge of my fabric is called a seam allowance, and a standard seam allowance for quilting is 1/4 inch, unless your pattern tells you to do something different. Some people press these seam allowances forward like this or back. But because these pieces are so small, that can kind of take a little bit out of the overall size of your square. So I'm going to press my little seams open and they'll lay a lot flatter. Flat is the best, is the goal when you're quilting. You want your pieces to lay flat, and this should remain, I think this was this gray was a 1.5 inch square. And so when you're done, once you cut off the excess and you press it back, your square should still be 1.5 inches. Here's one more. Like that. And Tilda patterns, a lot of the patterns I have done of hers are based on, everything is based on a square or rectangle, and then you do this corner technique. Some people call it stitch and flip. Some people call it snowballing the corners. Her patterns call it corner square triangles. Like this one here, see, is a little bit shy of being the right size. I probably stitched a little too close to the line. I can make that work when I get ready to sew the other pieces together. But my goal is to have it be like that. That's a pretty darn close. That's pretty darn perfect. So this is what I'm doing today. I'll see you later in the next one.